I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we'll just kind of take a break when Paul comes in and let him say what he has to say. How's that? Fair enough? Okay.
Or you can say it at the end.
Or we can say it at the end. I like that. All right, I like the way you think. Okay. So my name is Kate Peterson, and I am today's program sponsored today by the Diamond Council of America, and I'll talk a little more about that a little bit later. But this afternoon, we're going to talk about the color of money, how to turn consumer trends for color into a profitable operation for your business. Again, you'll see there's no handouts around. Those of you who have heard me before, you know how this works. Just leave me a business card, and I will be more than happy to send you a copy of the deck, and you can have all the notes you want. Okay? What we know, it's funny, I just had this conversation with the folks from General Legacy earlier today, and what we know for sure in today's consumer environment is it's the story that sells. It's not the jewelry, it's not the item, it's not the certificate, it's not the documentation, it's not anything but the story. Whether it's the story you tell of the piece or whether it's the story the customer assigns to the piece, it's the story that sells. And every person has a story. Every customer has a story that they want to tell with a piece of jewelry. And every retail brand, every store has a story. So the first thing you have to ask yourself when you start thinking about turning a little known category for most consumers into a profit center is, what's your story? What's your brand's story? Do you have that very clearly articulated? Do you have a real idea of why someone would want to do business with you? What is it about your brand that makes it a compelling proposition for somebody? If you don't have that to start with, none of the rest of this makes any sense. You got to have something that differentiates you in your market, and you have to have a story to tell as a brand and as a store. So let's start with that proposition and assume that you already have that all together. Because you know that the key to success in today's market, in particular with the consumers that we're dealing with today, is distinction. You have to have unique and appropriate product for your market. You have to have real value that you're offering to the consumer, not necessarily the lowest price, but real value. You have to have a customer focus. I have to laugh. I follow a lot of the, a lot of the trade-related threads on some of the trade websites and things, Facebook and the rest, and I really have to chuckle sometimes when I read some of these threads about the awful customer that did this or the horrible customer that did that, or why do they always do this, or why do they always say that? It's like, hold on a second, folks. Did you just open up the business prevention department? Or are you really serious about taking care of your customers? At what point do we get to be cranky and decide that we're doing them a favor by being there? Because I'm hearing way too much of that out there. And the truth is, I know that in many cases what you read and people are just venting, I get all that. But at the end of the day, how much of that attitude really bleeds through? If you really feel that way, can you cover it up when the customer walks in the door? I think most often, no, you can't. It kind of comes through. So if your brand proposition doesn't include something that makes you customer focused in a way that the consumer actually appreciates being where they are because they know that you appreciate them, you're missing out on a big part of what can distinguish you in your market. And you also have to have a knowledgeable and enthusiastic staff. Whether it's one person, 3 people, 100 people. If everybody around you isn't knowledgeable and enthusiastic about what they're doing, it loses something in the translation. What does someone see when they walk in your front door? When they just walk in the door, what do they see? If you accept the fact that consumers walk into a fine jewelry store of any kind to find beautiful things to celebrate happy occasions, that's it in a nutshell. If what they see when they walk in is less than happy people, no, we're good. If what they see when they walk in is less than happy people, you've already defeated your purpose partway through. So that enthusiasm really has to be there. We're going to talk a little bit about the importance of passion in a minute. Keep in mind that in the consumers we're dealing with today, it's a new value proposition. Value isn't about product. It's tied to personal need and interest. They are not there to hear about what you have to offer. They are there to hear about what they want to hear and what they want to hear about. The product has to be completely tied to their personal need and interest. And that's what makes value for the consumer today. At the end of the day, it's all about make it mine. Personalization and making it mine. Color, in most stores today, offers that perfect option. The option to create something, the option to offer something that is highly personal and a highly personal choice for a consumer. The closest thing we can get to in diamonds is choosing shape. It's really about it. In the stone itself, obviously we can get into style and things of that nature, but in the stone itself, it's about shape. That's the only thing that differentiates one from the next in terms of the consumer's preferences. Now, when it comes to color, there's an entirely different world out there. And I don't know if you guys are seeing this yet in your own stores, but we're seeing more and more and more color in engagement rings. For no other reason than it's a personal statement. Okay, that makes a big difference to the consumer today. So kind of be aware of that and be ready, and don't be afraid to suggest it. We had a bunch of high school kids in here yesterday. I don't know if any of you saw this. The Diamond Council sponsors every year with AGTA. Diamond Council has a program for high school students. And it's part of the beginning jewelry sales course, the Diamonds course, that are available to high school kids who are interested and who really are thinking about internships and things like that. So every year at this show, we get a couple busloads of high school kids from different school systems to participate in the area. And we did the tour last year, and the kids are really engaged, and you'd hire any one of them guaranteed. They're really that good. But interestingly, over lunch, we played a little game with them about, what would you rather? I think is what they called it. They had a whole series of questions that we're asking these kids. Would you rather? And one of them that was asked to, first of all, there was about 4 guys in the group, and the rest were young women. And the question was, would you rather have a diamond or a colored gemstone in your engagement ring? And about 2/3 of the girls immediately said color. And then we went around and asked them what color they wanted. Blue was the big winner, but it usually is. But that's pretty typical. But it's interesting when you start to see how that attitude is shifting just a little bit. It's much more about personal expression. I love this quote. No matter what market or industry you're in, if you're obsessed with catering to evolving consumer needs, desires, and expectations, you're going to prosper through even the most insane global upheavals, whatever their flavor. But you have to be focused on evolving with your customer. All right. Now, in today's consumer market, today's consumers are hyper-connected. They place a premium on customization and on self-expression. We already know that. The whole industry has sort of shifted to custom as a big part of business just because so many people want something that's their own. One little word of caution on that. More often than not, the customer's definition of custom is not the same as ours. Customer comes in and says, I want to have an engagement ring made, or I want a custom engagement ring. Well, or a piece of jewelry of any kind, not necessarily an engagement ring. What they really mean is, I like that, but can you turn it sideways? I like that, but can you make it square instead of round? Okay, they look for customization, not custom. And what we see a lot of jewelers doing is the minute they hear that, they immediately flip to, I'm going to make you something new from scratch, which ends up being more costly in most cases, and oftentimes not really what the customer wanted in the first place. So kind of pay attention to that. It's customization more than anything else. Self-expression is a big part of it. Color is a great way to appeal to those desires. You can evoke that unique look and feel. You can create something that is theirs alone, and you can use color as an effective way to differentiate in a crowded marketplace. As I was having my conversation with Roger Jerry, one of the things that we were talking about with regard to retailers that do a really great job selling color is that they are very few and far between. So if you're not there yet, this is a great opportunity for you to get out in front of a marketplace where there's not much going on and be in front of people suggesting something that they may not be hearing about elsewhere. Customers look for a few things when they're choosing color. First and foremost, they look for palettes that resonate. Customers choose color palettes that resonate regardless of popularity or trend. Now, this is very important because, again, we see a lot of people chasing after the, Pantone color of the season or color of the year or whatever. It's all great stuff and it's good information. But at the end of the day, customers choose not necessarily because of that popularity or trend. They choose because they look for palettes that resonate with what they really mean. And if you look at some of these, I don't know how much of this you can see from that far back, but different colors and the companies that choose those colors for their logos. Okay? Optimism, clarity, and warmth. You look at things like Nikon, photography, Sprint for phone calls, Subway. Things that are kind of comforting, comfort food, comfort, look at Orange, friendly, cheerful, confidence, Nickelodeon TV for kids, Orange Crush, creative and wise. A lot of tech companies are in there, Yahoo, Sci-Fi, peaceful and healthy is John Deere of all things. That dark green color, that kind of take that down a notch and make it, what do you think of when you think of a tractor? It doesn't exactly go on a racetrack. Okay, it's that calming feeling. So people choose colors based on their mood. If you look at blue, trust, dependable, and strength, and all the things that are blue. Blue, if you ask, I don't even know exactly what the statistic is because it changes year to year for this year, But if you ask any number of people their favorite color, blue comes up about 2 to 1 in most cases. Okay? And if you think about what that means, that trust, that strength, that reliability, people feel that with blue. So customers choose color based on the way that color resonates with them and regardless of popularity. Color preferences reflect an individual's view of the world. Are they looking for comfort and trust? Do they feel that level of comfort and trust? Are they very optimistic? Are they very positive? Do they like things that are more calming and peaceful? It's very interesting to see why people choose the colors that they do. But the more you learn about the consumer and the more you learn in the conversation from the selling skill standpoint, the easier it is to make them very comfortable with something that they're going to be happy with in the long term. What we know about consumers today, particularly younger consumers, they've only known a real connected world. I mean, people under the age of 30 were literally born with a device in their hand. Okay, so they've been connected throughout their whole life. I mean, most of the people you talk to today that are, recent college graduates and below learned to read by the age of 4 using the computer and things like Reader Rabbit and other programs that they had available to them. They didn't learn to read in kindergarten. They had to kind of know that before they got there. Okay, so that connectivity is a big part of it. More hues, more saturated tech-driven hues tend to appeal to younger people today. Brighter, stronger colors, as long as the colors remain authentic and honest. In other words, they don't want a color that's been fabricated in a colored gemstone necessarily. They want something that is authentic and honest as it comes in that color. Now, I want to clarify that. That doesn't mean they won't buy a synthetic gemstone or they're against treated stones or whatever, but they don't want something that doesn't occur naturally in that color. In other words, sapphire comes blue. It's okay if you make it more blue, but you didn't take something that started out yellow and make it blue. Does that kind of make sense? Okay, so what that means in terms of intense and saturation, look at some of the stones that we see out there now that are that bright, intense, fascinating colors. You're going to find that those are going to do a lot better now than they have in the past with younger customers. Okay, these are people that are used to high intensity in what they see. Luxury customers have made it through the recession. As economic conditions have gotten better, they built a real strong sense of momentum and optimism. So things like yellows and oranges are doing very well in a lot of markets for people that really have that feeling of positive optimism. That sunny feeling is a good way to look at it. Okay? At the same time, bold and energetic colors kind of reflect those feelings in different ways. At the same time, they can play to the desire for that personalization, that individualism that people are looking for. The really bright blues as opposed to the darker blues, the bright greens, the peridos. Peridos is looking at a big resurgence right now in good qualities, not in kind of the commercial grade, everything you see in everybody's birthstone display. The really true, brilliant, beautiful peridot is seeing a resurgence again for a lot of those reasons. Okay? The thing is this, your customer wants distinction, you need distinction in your marketplace, and color creates that highly personal statement for the customer and a very unique offering for you as a business. Success in the long term for color gemstones today requires two things. It requires a passion for the customer, and it requires a passion for gemstones. And if you don't have both, if the people around you don't have both, something's going to fall through the cracks. So what do we mean by passion? Very simply, passion is an intense, driving, overmastering feeling or conviction. You got to believe, you've got to want it, you've got to love it. I was taught, and I'm sure many of you were as well, that when it comes to sales, particularly when it comes to fine jewelry sales, you don't have to love it, you just have to sell it. Right? Anybody else heard that coming up? I used to get that all the time. There was plenty. I wish I had a quarter for everything I had to sell that I could honestly say I had to really work hard to think of something nice to say about. Okay, but I worked in chain stores too, so there is that. But the reality is that when it comes to colored gemstones, if you don't have the passion, if you don't really believe it, if you can't really look at that and see the beauty in it in a way that is just beyond what you see with your eye, you're not going to be able to sell it. So once again, look around you. Is it just you? That's fine. You need to have it yourself. If it's not just you and you have other people working with you, you got to take a look and say, do they have it or do they not? And if they don't have it, either they're not going to sell the product, we need to move them on to something else or find somebody else who can, or find a way to instill it in them. And sometimes the best way to instill it in them is to have them actually physically look at them, touch them, feel them, get them engaged, get them talking about what's important to them. Most importantly, that passion and that conviction has to match that same standard for authenticity. You can't fake this. You can't get so excited about something if it's not real. This customer has a very well-developed BS filter. Okay, they've been inundated with information for all their lives. And now they know how to sort through what's real and what's not. Okay, so that authenticity becomes very important as well. You have to have a passion for the customer also. It can't just be about making the sale. It's really got to be about what do you know and how do you relate? What are the questions you're asking? How are you conversing with people? What are you finding out about them? What are you determining when you first look at them? What can you assume when you first look at somebody? I'm looking right across the room. I'm going to say, I bet you like blue. I bet if I asked what your favorite color was, and you say blue, there you go. She's wearing all kinds of blue. I wear black and white all the time. Sometimes it's hard to tell. It's only because it's easy when I travel. But, there are things that you can just, even a piece of jewelry, something of interest that you can spot about somebody. How do you relate to people? When you see somebody coming in, are you most concerned with, how are you today? What brings you in today? What are you here to look at? Or do you want to know their story? I said in the very beginning, everybody's got a story. So I got started in this business. I got started in this business as a job, and within about the first week, I realized every person walking in the door had a story, and I wanted to know it. That was it. That was it. That was where the bug got me. I was 16 years old. I just knew that everybody walking in that door had a story, and I wanted to know it. And the more I learned about people, the easier it was to help touch what it was that made sense to them and what they loved. You got to be able to listen. The clues are there. You have to make suggestions for people for the right reasons. And those right reasons are their reasons, not our reasons. It's not because amethyst is February's birthstone. Believe it or not. If you don't love purple, it doesn't matter what the birthstone is. Okay? It's kind of an archaic way of looking at things anyway anymore, this whole birthstone idea. Most people now are more interested in what color they love. If someone's buying a gift, I won't ask what color does she like or does he like. I'll ask what color do you like to see on her or him. There's a question the buyer can answer. I can't, it's like, you think about it like you watch the court shows on TV and you hear all the objections. It's hearsay. If I ask you what somebody else likes, it's hearsay. If I ask you what you like to see, that's a fact you can rely on. Makes the sale a lot easier. Okay? Make sure you're showing things for their reasons. You have to have that passion for colored gemstones, as I said. Let's get back here just a second here. There you go. That passion for colored gemstones has to be part of your nature and part of what you believe. We choose color. We all choose colors we love to enhance, to symbolize, to accessorize who we are and what we do, to attract, just like in the animal kingdom, to illustrate, to emphasize, empower, adjust. There are a lot of reasons we choose the colors that we do. And when you have a passion for something that you're seeing, I was walking around with those kids yesterday, looking at some of the things I saw on the floor, and I got to tell you, after all these years, my eyes still get this big when I look at that 55-carat Paraiba that is just breathtaking. Yeah, it does take kind of that much, but you still, you have to be able to get that excited about what you're looking at in your showcase. I had a lady come in, talk about why people choose what they choose. A lady had come into a retail client of mine, and she was a trustee of an estate for her best friend who had just recently passed away. She had about 40 rings in a box, and she put them in front of my friend and said, can you help me with this? I need to liquidate her estate. This is part of the deal. And he said, well, I don't buy, but I was coming in to visit with him, and he had me take a look and at least know where to point him to buyers, okay? For this stuff. Turns out the woman had 175 pieces. She wasn't a jewelry collector, she was a jewelry hoarder. And they were all one more stunning than the next. All right, but here's the interesting thing. And this is where you have to understand how customers think about color and this passion thing. This woman had all the money she needed. She bought what she loved. It didn't matter if it was a $20 item on a street corner in Mexico or a $20,000 black opal ring. She bought what she loved. If she loved it, she bought it. She didn't bother to ask if it was silver or gold. She didn't bother to ask the quality of the stone. It was what she loved. She was smart enough and savvy enough as a buyer that she didn't get taken very often. What was in there was good for what she had. But interestingly, the color range, probably 75% of everything that was in there, maybe 80%, were blues to purples to green, blue, purple range. People buy based on palettes that make them feel good. Okay, so this was a customer who had a remarkable passion for colored gemstones. That became a very easy job for me because as I'm looking at these pieces, I'm just marveling over all of them. Not necessarily my taste in many cases, but to be able to look at it and say, you know what, I bet I understand why she chose this based on everything else that I'm seeing here. Some spectacular boulder opals and black opals and all in that blue and green color ranges. So think in terms of why someone would have that level of passion for what they're doing. Color is nonverbal communication with symbolism and meaning. This is a great book, by the way. If you really want to put a countertop book out in your store and get people excited about color, Leatrice Eisman from Pantone, this is the woman that ultimately chooses the color of the season and the color of the year. I've heard her speak before. She's pretty amazing. But that is a really great book, the Pantone Color Resource Book. Just to put it on the counter. It's about $50 or $60 on Amazon, but it's worth it. It's beautifully done, beautifully illustrated. Your job is to help your customers choose. Choose hue and intensity, choose the right gemstone based on fashion palette, lifestyle, budget, all the things that make a difference to them, but most importantly, based on what they love. And consider the symbolism. What does it mean to them? Why is it important to them? If you understand what's important to the consumer, finding the right gemstone to make that symbolic and make it real starts to become a lot easier. So now let's talk about these trends. Color and 5 consumer trends that really matter in 2020. Now, when I talk about consumer trends, I give you all the background on why color sells and how it's selling today. But there are certain consumer trends, worldwide consumer trends. These are not just jewelry trends. They are not fashion trends. These are consumer behavior trends that you need to be aware of. All right, and how they relate to selling color is really very interesting across the board. Another quote that I love from trendwatching.com is, neither the meek nor the lazy shall inherit the earth. If you're paying attention to trends and you're ready to step left, right, or forward, you're going to find yourself in a much better situation to jump out and be ahead of the curve on these things. The 5 consumer trends that matter, really, are the ones that you're going to pay the most attention to as we go forward. I'm going to go through each one of them. The first one, now this one is very, very interesting, and I really want you to hear this one. This is one of the most important ones. It's called green pressure. 2020, consumers are moving from eco-status to eco-shame. Let me explain what I mean by that. For the last 5 to 6 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, everybody was driven to this whole eco-status thing. It was cool, it was in, it was fashionable to wave a flag that says, hey, I'm doing things the eco-friendly way, right? Now, it's a shame if you don't. It used to be you were cool if you did it. Now you're shamed if you don't. Okay, examples? Whoops, I just turned myself off. There we go. Sustainable, here's the thing, before I get to the examples. Sustainable alternatives are widespread. They're affordable. They're just as good or better than what we call the legacy option, the old way of doing things, what used to be. All right? A Prius runs just as well as a gas-powered car now. Okay, so there's no real excuse not to do it. Does that kind of make sense? And that's kind of how consumers are looking at things right now. Eco-consumption is less about the status of opting in and more about the shame of opting out. Just a few examples, and I'll tell you what this really means to you, especially with regard to colored stones. A couple of examples. Tesla. In 2008, there was a $100,000 eco-friendly status car put on the market. It's 11 years ago, or 12 years ago now. It was status, right? In 2020, there's a $35,000 option out there for the mainstream driver. That's where Tesla's evolved to this. In 2016, Adidas, to make a point, made a shoe made completely out of recycled ocean plastic. They made 50 pairs. Those pairs sold for in excess of $250 each, and then up from there. They started out at that price, then they started to be auctioned. Okay? Last year, 11 million pairs were made and sold. In other words, why would you not? If you have the option, why would you not? They're just as good as the ones that use non-sustainable materials. The Impossible Burger. In 2016, they were sold only at one restaurant in New York. Today, they're sold in 7,000 Burger Kings across the United States. So those eco-status things that were important to people, okay? For anybody who hasn't tried an Impossible Burger, I am not a vegetarian. I am not a big fan, typically, of this stuff. I have vegetarian friends that won't eat them because they're too much like meat. The texture, the taste. They use walnut stuff in there and beet juice, I don't know. They're not bad, actually. I've eaten them with my son who's vegetarian, and I don't think they're all that bad considering what the other ones taste like. Anyway, I digress. The fact of the matter is that when the alternatives are reasonable and when the alternatives are worthwhile, there's no excuse not to. What does that mean to us? In our industry, carefully monitored sustainable alternatives are available in nearly every element of our business. If you're not paying attention to this, it doesn't matter how big your city, how small your town. If you are not paying attention to the fact that you should be looking for sustainable alternatives in your business, you're going to start to lose business. This is a really big deal, okay? It's no longer just okay to say, we recycle our trash. This is just not. There was a long time when it was good marketing to just say, we're part of the green initiatives in our community. Now you really got to step out there. And there's a lot of resources available in our industry too, particularly in colored gemstones. Go downstairs and talk to some of the folks, talk to the people at Gem Legacy, talk to some of the folks that are supporting artisanal miners and sustainable mining in different parts of the world. There's no reason not to. The alternatives are available to you. And if the vendors who are not offering those alternatives are the ones you're buying from, it's on you to put some pressure on them to say, hey, we don't want to be behind the curve on this. We want to be ahead of it. Okay, same applies to diamonds. And it applies in the positive sense as well. It's not any longer about waiting for the customer to ask you a question about this stuff. You should be able to hang your hat and part of your brand culture on the fact that you proactively talk about these things to your customers. Whether it's Diamonds Do Good, Total Clarity, Gem Legacy, you can pick any number of these, but be a part of it as a retailer. Get on board with these guys. It's important to be able to make a statement if it's part of your brand values. Okay, because it's going to become more and more and more important to your consumers, right? It's business. Really, in all honesty, it is business suicide not to get on board with this as soon as you can. Just like about 4 years ago now, we said if you weren't e-commerce enabled within 5 years, you're going to be struggling and facing some trouble. We're seeing it, and we're seeing it left, right, and center. So that this is another one of those things. Don't wait. Get in front of this one. The second trend. And this one's kind of fun. Brand avatars. What do we mean by that? That's crazy. Brands take on a powerful new form. To be successful in the digital age today, your brand has to be participatory and immersive. The old website where all you do is put up a page that offers information isn't any good anymore. They've lost the attention span for that. They're going to move on to one that's more interactive and engaging. Your digital presence has to be human for all practical purposes. What a lot of companies are doing now to make that happen is putting live chat on there. That works too. Not quite as effective, but live chat works too. And the avatar, if you create an avatar presence, has to be an embodiment of all that you stand for. That pretty pictures and good information website's just not going to cut it anymore in today's market. It's got to be better and it's got to be more engaging. Don't expect consumers to want to connect with you or to find you. You have to go to where they are, all right? And look for ways to make those connections. Anybody recognize that guy? Nobody from the Northeast, huh? It's Jerry Robbins. It used to be Robbins Diamonds, Robbins 8th and Walnut. It was a huge, the company's down to one store now run by his sons. Jerry passed away in 2018. But he was one of the very first. Talk about ahead of your time. This guy had an avatar way before his time. I'll show it to you in a minute. He was also very, very good at connecting with customers digitally. By the way, the condensation of 5 stores down into one wasn't out of failure. It was out of making one massive, highly profitable operation. And that's what his sons are running now. Customers will respond when you meet them in the digital channels they live in and serve their needs. You have to be able to solve problems, offer useful information, deliver even a dose of fun. That was Jerry's avatar. That was the guy that talked to you when you clicked on his website, even 5 or 6 years ago. All right, when you clicked on there and you had a question, you clicked the question, Jerry the avatar talked to you. All right, sounds goofy, but he became known for that. It became an engaging piece of everything that they did. So again, there are ways to do this that are quick and easy, not the least of which is just attach live chat to your website via the company that you use. Most website companies have that availability. Okay, that's not that's not the best way to do it, but it's the easiest way to do it. The best way to do it is to get somebody who can design a brand avatar for you. Put it out there and have that as part of who you are. It shows up in your ads, it shows up on your site. Does an avatar make sense for you? I don't know. Can you use a digital human presence to communicate with your customers? Do the research on this. There's a tremendous number of companies outside of our industry that already do this. They have kind of digital humans that are their representative of their brand. Cosmetics companies are big on this right now. They're appealing to young women and they want to be able to make that that level of engagement. So they do that. To capitalize, if you're going to do this, assess 2 key areas: the digital lives of the consumers you want to reach. Where are they looking? Where are they going? Who are they? Where does that avatar need to appear? And the critical elements of your brand and your values. How does this need to look? How does it need to sound? Okay. Jerry's avatar was kind of cute and funny. Jerry used to, one of his trademarks, ever since I met him probably 40 years ago, was he used to wear a diamond, about a 1-carat diamond on a clip in his beard. And the reason he did it was because everybody asked about it. That was it. It wasn't, he wasn't just a out there guy. He was an out there guy, but that wasn't the reason he did it. He did it because people asked, and it was a conversation piece. So the avatar, you notice, had the diamond in the beard. Right? And it was all about one of his brand positions in the market was a diamond is for everyone. There shouldn't be limitations on who can own a diamond. We can find you something regardless of your budget, regardless of your taste. And that was part of their brand ideal. So assess your brand and decide if that makes sense for you. Okay. The biggest point to me behind brand avatar as a trend is we know that's, again, that as the customer age continues to drop, that's where they're looking. It's got to be digital. It's got to be engaging. It can't just be static. You have to be engaged and involved in what they want to do and where they want to do it. The third trend is we call metamorphic design. Customers are demanding relevance as a service. Everything is service related now. 2 powerful consumer expectations are converging. First, that desire for personalization, that real need to want something that's different, unique, unusual, that's theirs alone. And second, the reshaping of convenience. Everything is a service. Now, what's weird about that is those 2 things don't necessarily go together in our world. They go together in a lot of other consumer worlds, but not necessarily in ours. If I say to you, I want this customized, I want it turned this way, and I want this done, and I want that done, in most stores, I'm going to hear, yeah, we can do that. It'll take 4 to 6 weeks to have something new made. Okay, that's not going to fly anymore. Not when they can go to 5 websites and have something, they can put a little of this and a little of that and piece and this and that together and have it inside of 5 days. Okay, I'm not saying you have to deliver in 5 days. You can certainly make the case for quality craftsmanship and everything else. But you got to be a little sharper about understanding that convenience combined with personalization is really what this drive is all about. Business relevance, staying relevant, means constant adaptation around the needs of the customer. Are you paying attention to the requests that you get every day, every week? How many times do you have to hear a request before you start thinking, yeah, maybe I should do that? Lots of times we hear that about product, various brands and things like that. How many times does someone have to come in and ask you for something before, instead of saying, why does anybody want that junk, you start to think, what can I do to satisfy that need? Okay, just give it some thought. There can never be a static, perfect solution. There's never one answer for every person, for every customer, but it's a matter of paying attention to bigger trends in your market and staying on top of getting in front of what people are asking for in terms of service. How relevant can you make service in your business? Expectations for seamless convenience are going to keep increasing. Expectations for ever-shifting personalization are going to keep increasing, right? People are going to continue to want one of a kind in mind now. You don't have to produce it now. You just have to be ready. When it comes to color, this is very interesting because many of you will remember back in the day when your biggest consumer was that baby boomer consumer. Not the Gen Xers or not the millennials that we're seeing now, but that baby boom consumer. Hopefully the bulk of your business is not still that consumer, because if it is, I got a few guys that do great GOBs. Because that's where you're headed. If you're not attracting that younger consumer, you really have to be thinking about what you're going to do going forward, okay? But anyway, back in the days of the baby boom consumer, one of the trademarks of the baby boomer consumer was, I want it now. Right? They would walk in and tell you what they want, and if you didn't have it, they would either settle for something else or go look somewhere else. I want it and I want it now. Think of all the things that came to life in the era of the baby boomers as consumers. Everything from drive-through windows to bottled water. Why? Because we wanted it now. Okay? And what that created for many jewelry stores was grossly inflated inventory. It's taken people up till now to get rid of a lot of the stuff that they bulked up with from those days. Why did we do that? We did that because we figured if a customer was going to come in looking for this style pendant, we needed to have it in blue, green, red, yellow, and purple. Because if we were missing one of those colors, they just go look somewhere else. Okay, then we found in the next kind of iteration of customers as they evolved, that really wasn't the case anymore. That if they said, I like that, but can you get it in purple? And you said, absolutely I can, I'll have it for you in 2 weeks or whatever long it took, they were fine with that. Okay, so we didn't have that any longer. We're cycling back around now to people who have a much higher level of expectation for time and convenience. That doesn't mean you go out and buy things in every color again. It means that you stock enough representative pieces that you buy yourself the ability to take time to get what they want. And as long as you keep on top of information and keep them informed as to timing and things of that nature and deliver as promised, you're not going to have trouble. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, we're back to those days where we have to be able to be on top of the convenience factor for customers. So what form of ultra-convenient, ever-shifting personalization will your customers come to expect from you? What can you do? Okay? What about product availability, like I just described? Can you stock a representative selection of things that give people an opportunity to see what you can do for them and be confident and comfortable with it? How about customized special events? That's obviously a picture of one of Roger Derry's gemstone roundtables. That's a very customized special event. You're only bringing 10 to 15 people in there at most. And if you're doing it right, everybody wants an invitation. And only a few can get them. You can only accommodate so many people. And it's very personalized and very customized because you know in advance what they like in terms of color palettes and things of that nature, and those are the stones that get put in front of them. Okay, those are the kinds of things that produce a level of personalization on a one-to-one basis that make a difference to customers. How about your hours of operation? Let's shift from product to something else now. Hours of operation. Are you open when your customers want you to be, or are you open when you want to be? Wow, that's a hard one. Is it okay to be closed on Monday? Probably. As long as you're available for your customers when they want to see you on Tuesday. Okay, does that mean one evening a week? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on your market. But the bigger thing is to figure out, are you there when your customers need you? Or are you operating to satisfy your own needs as well as your customers, but putting your own needs primary? If it means hiring somebody to help, then it means hiring somebody to help. But at the same time, making sure that you're not losing business because you're not available when your customers need you to be. Oh, by the way, one great way to solve that problem without hiring somebody or staying open extra hours, upscale your website. They can shop 24/7 on a good quality website that's e-commerce enabled. What about custom design innovation? If we know that custom is the way that most consumers are looking today, what are you doing to make sure you're staying on top of that? Are you working with somebody that has CAD capability? Are you making sure that whether you do it yourself, whether you have design capabilities in your store, or whether you have somebody that can do it? How's your production? Are you working with a production house that can move things through relatively quickly? If you work in your own shop, that's great. How quick are you? Or do you need help to increase production levels? Okay, think about cost-benefit analysis on a lot of these things, but innovation becomes a really important part of this. Another trend, the burnout. Now, smart brands are hurrying up to help those burned by the pressures of modern life. Here's some interesting statistics. Recent studies around the white-collar world, this is all over the world surveying white-collar people, tell us a few things that are kind of interesting. This constant pressure to be on fire all the time is causing many to burn through their mental and physical reserves. Growing focus on well-being, individuals are dealing with this always-on lifestyle in a whole new way. Okay, so recent trends tell us 86% report experience anxiety due to work pressure. 66% of working parents report struggling to care for their own health. They care for everybody around them, they take care of everybody at work, but they struggle to care for their own health. 71% they feel that they work in an always-on environment. What does this have to do with us? How about retail therapy? Is my experience when I come into your store one that makes me feel more comfortable, or does it simply raise my stress level? How can an experience in a retail store raise my stress level? Well, I feel like it's pressure, if I feel like I'm not important enough, if something isn't ready on time, if I took time out of my day to go get something because it was promised and it's not there, there's a lot of ways that can go sideways if you're not careful. May 2019, the World Health Organization recognized burnout as an occupational health hazard. That's a phenomenon. That's above hazard. It's not quite a hazard yet. okay? Taking action is really the right thing to do, and it's a huge opportunity for you for innovation. What can you do to create a more inviting, a more comfortable, more relaxing environment for people? Okay, and change yourself from the inside out. Get ready for a future in which mental well-being, your own and your employees, is every bit as important as your supply chain. Okay, if you put it simply, the best organizations recognize the new reality and reorient their internal culture around it. Consider how this mental burnout impacts you, your consumers, and your employees. If you have employees that work with you, how many of them would say that they feel added stress at work? How many of them feel like they're approaching burnout? Have you ever had somebody working for you that just flamed out? Just couldn't do it anymore? It's not a bad sign. Not a bad reflection on you necessarily. If you at least start looking at that as, well, it wasn't their fault that they stressed out. Maybe I could have created a better environment and learned something from it. Okay? Simply make the task of engaging with your brand easier, faster, and more efficient. That's one way that you as a business can manage this trend. Make the task of engaging with your brand easier, faster, and more efficient. Kill any of the hassle. Look objectively at your business and ask yourself, where are the hassle points? Where are the stress points for my customers first and foremost? Okay, can you think of anything? Anybody think of anything in your business that's a stress point for your customer? Anybody? It's hard to do that, to be objective.
Delivery time.
Okay, delivery time. What else? Making a decision. How can you take the stress out of making a decision? It's a good one. We'll talk about delivery time too, but how can you take the stress out of making a decision? First thing that comes to my mind, don't overwhelm them with choices. Typical salesperson approach. I'm looking for an engagement ring, or I'm looking for a sapphire ring for my wife. Okay, here you go. What do you like?
Pure choices.
Yeah, pare it down. That doesn't mean carry less rings. It means I'm going to talk to this guy and say, tell me about your wife. And then I'm going to pull 3 rings out based on what he tells me. Okay, it's my job to help him make that decision, not his job to walk in and have to sort through all this stuff by himself. Okay, so the next step in the process then is, if you know that that's a stress point, that making a decision is a stress point, now you're in a position to create a little bit of a marketing campaign around that. All right? Tell the consumer, we get it, you're stretched. That's why we've made things easier for you. When you come to visit my jewelry store, experts are going to talk with you, take the time to talk with you and find out what's important to you and help make the decision as stress-free as possible. Now you got something you can hang your hat on. Delivery time. Yeah, of course that's a stressor, because sometimes people don't give themselves enough time to get what they need or what they want. So what do you do with that? If you know it's a stressor, maybe you have option A and option B. You've got items that are ready to go, and you've got items that can be made. If I want something remarkably unique and different, but I've given you 3 days to do it, obviously that's not going to happen. So what if part of that, if you know that's a problem, what if you create part of that where you've got bits and pieces and I can mix and match and I can create something out of pieces that can be put together in that amount of time? Maybe that's an easy solution. Once again, the marketing campaign. We get it. You're stretched and you're stressed and you forgot about the fact that you need that important gift at the last minute. Come see us because we can fix that for you. You see what I mean? I mean, this is a big deal. And that's on the consumer side. Okay, that's the consumer side of things. You really can, as a business, take a stand in this one and make that important, but it takes a lot of training and it takes a lot of commitment on your part to be that versatile and that flexible with your customers. You also have to make meaningful changes to your internal culture. Alleviate stress on the potential burnout among your own people, including yourselves. Go way back to the beginning when I talked about, if somebody's not real happy to be there, or they think in terms of how bad is this customer experience going to be, with how bad is my experience going to be with this customer? How hard is that to cover up? I think it's impossible to cover up. People see through that. And if someone is stressed and stretched and burned out, that customer feels that right away. And all of a sudden their happy moment isn't so happy anymore. Okay, so you got to find a way to look at that in your internal culture as well. How stretched are you, and what can you do about it as a business owner, as a manager? How stretched are you, or stressed are you as an associate, as an employee, and what can you as a business owner do about that? And you got to look for ways to make that work. Again, in small businesses, I understand that it's really hard, but the fact is that it's harder to replace people than it is to find ways to accommodate needs and be innovative in how you work with people that you have. Whether it's shorter work weeks, split schedules. There's stories, there's untold stories about things like how much more productive Microsoft became when they flipped everybody to a 4-day work week. They still work 40 hours. They're still paid for what they work, but they do it in 4 days instead of 5 days, and they're much more productive because of it. That doesn't make sense in a lot of small businesses where you only have 2 or 3 people, but what can you do? Do you really need to be there at 9 a.m.? Are your customers there at 9? Or would your customers be there at 10? Do you really need to, what can you do to make it easy? If somebody needs to be gone at 4, if somebody has to resign because they have to be there at 4 o'clock every day to get their kid from the school bus, do you let them go, or do you try to find a way to let them go at 4 o'clock every day and get somebody else to cover the back half of that shift? There's no right or wrong to these things. It's just a matter of thinking outside the box and past the way we've always done things. That's all. It's hard to find. I saw a statistic just yesterday that a huge portion of jobs in this country are retail jobs, front-end retail jobs. And it's harder and harder and harder to find people to fill them. So you got to be a little bit more creative and a little more innovative. If you want to be successful in your market and you want the best people, you've got to be a little more innovative about finding great ways to keep them engaged and to reduce this burnout. Right? And the last trend you want to pay attention to, it's called civil media. We've been talking about social media for a long time now. Now let's talk about civil media. The future of social media is meaningful connections. More and more and more consumers today are escaping from toxic online communities. They don't want to be a part of it anymore. They don't want that toxicity. They don't want to be attached to their phones. The fact of the matter is that the big platforms that are out there right now really do put a lot of effort in keeping us addicted. Whether it's the ads, whether it's the way feeds come in, they know what they're doing and they know how to increase screen time. Okay? And most of us, if we're going to be real honest with ourselves, once you get into it, once you get involved in Facebook or whatever it is, you kind of stay stuck with it for a long time and you waste a lot of time doing it, and they know you do. That's how they sell ads, by the way, by how much time the average person stays on the site. Okay? So you got to be aware of that. A lot of consumers today, particularly younger consumers, are getting out of that. They're getting away from the toxic online communities. Smaller, more intimate digital spaces that facilitate mutual respect and communication based on mutual interests are becoming more and more important. How does this fit with you? This is a really good one. I really thought about this one a lot when I was looking at it. What people really want to do now is interact with like-minded peers without judgment. They want to interact in environments with people at any given time who share their interests and concerns. Okay? For example, here's a few examples of what's out there right now where people are going instead of Twitter and Facebook and all of the big platforms. There's a site called Quilt, and it's for professional women. The way Quilt works is women are grouped in the app by location, by geographic location. And at any given time, this group of professional women, anybody can post a gathering. If I post a gathering at my house on Quilt, professional women who get that invitation are professional women that are part of Quilt that live within a radius. And then they can respond, and then we can discuss whether or not there's going to be a get-together. Or it's just an online chat that goes with that group. It's a very interesting way of doing things. Another one, and Sprite, Coca-Cola Company and Sprite was behind this, Pepsi rather, You Are Not Alone. That's a specific social media site for specific issue-driven youth discussions. Kids having trouble with bullying, young women's having trouble with, staying on top of fashion, whatever it is that means something to a young person. There are various channels in this page that people can attach to. And these are young people now that are getting away from the bigger platforms where things like bullying and harassment are big problems. So they're going to different areas. One of my favorites, Night Feed. It's a new social media channel. It's specifically designed for new moms that are up late feeding the baby. What do you do when you have to be up for an hour in the middle of the night while your kid is nursing? Well, you can be chatting with other women who are doing exactly the same thing at the same time. And the topics are really interesting. Things about feeding issues, things about, their baby concerns, their new mom concerns. Right, these are all very specific and very personal. I love this one. Stream queens. They're drag artists who play video games together. They play on an Amazon platform. All right, my point is that they're very specific, targeted groups. Okay, what does that mean to you? Is it a stretch to think that you can create a new community and foster new connections that are truly relevant to people who value what you do? How many people follow your Facebook feed now? Do you have one? If you do, how many people are on it? Would those same people, if you created a separate page, kind of like Jewelers Helping Jewelers, those of you who are on that, imagine what happened to that. That started with 5 people. Now we've got however many, 20,000, okay? Which I don't use as an example very specifically because it's no different than most big sites with regard to bullying and all kinds of other nonsense going on. But there's a lot of great things that come out of it too, and that's why people follow it, including me. But the reality is that, you could create that. You could create a community that's for your collectors, it's for gem aficionados. What if it was just about discussing what they love and what they want and what they think is really cool? Okay? It can be for local hobbyists, even people who aren't in the market to buy gemstones from you, or anything from you, but who are local hobbyists that want to be a part of it, getting into your community. You could do this. You could create your own small community environment. Okay, it's not hard to do. But it does take a little bit of dedication and a little bit of time. And I would venture to say that you might be more successful with something like this than with trying to capitalize on a Facebook feed that you have now that's just part of the general population. Okay? Again, just think about who are your regular visitors to your social media sites and what can you do. I just gave you I'll give you 5 trends here. The fact is consumer trends aren't like the seasons. They don't play out neatly across the calendar, across the year. You've got to kind of keep an eye out for them in your market. And they emerge via a lot of different things, cross-pollination, combination, meeting, matching, existing consumer behaviors. Once they've emerged, trends consistently evolve. They're moving forward rapidly. So knowing these 5, because these are the big ones going into this year and next, and paying attention to how they evolve make a big difference. None of these trends are relevant to all consumers. Human beings are far too complex. All right, so don't try to apply them across the board, but look at the bigger picture in your market. When you think about which trends are right for you, think about how you're going to apply them. Trend watching is all about application. All these things I tell you about what is driving color sales in the market and what's going on with consumer trends, you got to think about how those two things relate. And remember that trends mean nothing if you don't use them to make what you do and the world a better place. If you don't use these things to really make your business better, make your community better, and do better things for your customers, it's not a good use of your time. Absorb the trends, take them to your team, share, discuss, argue, conspire, whatever it takes, but most of all, do something. Act on them. If you're like most of us, we come to events like this and we go seminar to seminar and we learn really great things, and then we go back to work, and because we have to go back to work because we've been gone for a few days, everything's been waiting for us. Everything that we learned, everything that we felt, everything that we experienced kind of flushes because we're too busy getting back to work. Okay, try to think about that a little bit and make some use of this information. This really represents a very real opportunity for you. If you know that your customer is looking for, in addition to quality product, an experience, inclusion in a community, convenience, symbolism, a great story, personal expression, all the things that matter to a customer, if you understand that that's what they're looking for, there's an opportunity for you to deliver in a way that you haven't before, or maybe in a bigger way than you have. But look at the opportunity to deliver what different customers are needing in different ways. Keep in mind that whether it's yourself or your staff, effective and ongoing training is really very important. People thrive and behave better in an innovative culture where growth and learning are really valued. Whether it's Diamond Council programs, which I highly recommend, or any other one, whether it's GIA or any of the others that are down there, make sure that you keep people engaged and keep up with learning. What's new, what's exciting, what's different, what's available to them. Ongoing training, progress, continuous collaboration, keeping people engaged is essential. It takes a lot of time and a commitment, and I understand that, but the payback is significant. When anybody asks me about training, the cost of training, what's it going to cost to train my employees? What's it going to cost to have you come in and do this work or that work? My answer is never in terms of dollars. It's in terms of how many more pieces they're going to have to sell to pay for me. Because at that point, I'm measuring myself. If I can't deliver that amount more in increased sales, then it's not worth it to you. Okay, the same thing goes for any other kind of training. Do the cost-benefit analysis. Instead of considering whether it's going to be $200 to buy a course, ask yourself if you can sell one more $500 piece at your average margin. than you might not have sold otherwise. All of a sudden, it's a bargain, isn't it? One piece. Anything you sell over one piece is profit. Okay, so that's kind of how you have to look at this stuff, right? Keep on it. Support opportunities for learning because it underscores a priority for you. A learning environment, a learning culture develops passion. And we've already established that passion is really what it takes to get the job done, right? Remember, the long battle isn't going to be won in grand gestures. It's going to be won one customer at a time. One sale at a time. Make the one count for you. Take the time to learn about the customer. Take the time to measure those trends and figure out what you have to do to make yourself grow and to be a part of their community and their lives, and you're going to be successful. Questions? Anybody?
Can we get a copy of this?
Absolutely. Leave your card right there on the corner of the table, and I will see that I will email copies out within the next day or two. Okay? Any other questions? Anything I can answer for you? Otherwise, I don't think there's anything else in this room today, but tomorrow, for those of you who do have employees, we'll be talking all about, at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, we'll be talking about dealing with difficult people. I expect a full house for that one. Thanks so much for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you.